Uh, on behalf of INDO HISPANIC LANGUAGE ACADEMY, I welcome you all today evening. It's a special day for us as we have taken a project to translate into Spanish and Bengali the poetry book of Abhay, a diplomat, now serving the country as ambassador of India. And we are also glad to have today with us Ambassador Jorge, who served an ambassador of Chile in India, and we had the opportunity to meet him also for several times in Kolkata, in Delhi. And today is a special occasion that the book, the name Alphabets of Latin America, the poetry book written by Ambassador Abhay, who is now placed in Madagascar, serving India as an Indian ambassador. And the book is really good, that Anirban will be telling about it. And I also welcome everybody, Professor Ganguly and others, everybody today, because today is a special day. This is the time that we are connecting, and we are joined also by Professor Gladys Enriquez of the San Carlos University of Guatemala, because we are celebrating 200 years of the independence of Central American countries and 75 years of Indian independence. And we have made a committee, and whose chief coordinator in Central America is Professor Gladys, coordinating with other professors of different universities of Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama. And this is a part of our celebration, because we don't want only the literature of Latin American countries to come to India. We are trying our best that our literature also reaches there. So after welcoming, I request Professor Ambassador Abhay to give the introductory note.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mukhopadhyay. It's a special pleasure for me to be speaking today with such a distinguished panel, with the presence of Ambassador Jorge Haim and the translator, Mr. Anirban, as well as the distinguished audience who have kindly joined us this evening. First of all, I would like to also remember Ambassador Vishwanathan, who is not joining us today because of some urgent personal travel, and the person who introduced us actually. So it was Ambassador Vishwanathan who suggested suggested your name and suggested that possibly you could be interested in this book. So we fondly remember him today, and hope I wish he was here and he could have joined us this evening. Alphabets of Latin America, it's a book I wrote during my stay in Brazil from 2016 to 2019, and during the course of my travels through various countries in Latin America. And it was
it's a lot. So I think the connection is lost. I hope that Ambassador Abhay will come back soon and will join us. This book here is being, we too are doing a translation. I myself Dr. Dibbajyoti Mukhopadhyay, who is a Spanish language teacher, and with me, the translating is being done by Mr. Anirban Chattopadhyay, who is the former editor of the Anandabazar Potrika, the highest circulated Bengali dailies, a group which you may heard of. The English is the Telegraph, the same group. And Anirban is a dedicated learner of Spanish language, and I hope he is doing this book and he will be doing more. And we have started this book long back, and slowly we are proceeding, and it will be released in the next Kolkata International Book Fair, where we hope that a Spanish-speaking country will be the invited country. We hope so, but still the conditions are not there to declare that the 22nd Kolkata Book Fair. I think we can go to Ambassador Jorge Jaime. Ambassador sir, when Ambassador Abhay will join, he will give he will continue his speech, but Ambassador, your words, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening to our listeners in India. Good morning to those in the Americas. In the first place, let me thank the Indo Hispanic Language Academy of Kolkata, one of my favorite cities in India, for the opportunity to be here. It is really a pleasure to share this podium with Ambassador Abhay, such a distinguished diplomat and poet. As was just said, the Spanish edition of the Alphabets of Latin America will be released at the Kolkata Book Fair next February, I understand, both in Spanish and in Bengali. And the Kolkata Book Fair, one of the biggest book fairs in the world, of course, with several million attendees, brings back some very fond memories to me. Only in 2004, only a few months after my arrival in India, I had the privilege to give one of the opening addresses at the Kolkata Book Fair in February of 2004. And that was because that year, Chile was the focal country.
Yeah.
And it was the focal country because it was the centennial of Pablo Neruda. And we also had one of our most noted contemporary poets, Raúl Zurita, in attendance at that fair. And he also gave one of the opening addresses and played a very prominent role in that fair. And it brings to mind, you know, what is often said about Calcutta, that it is the cultural capital of India. And there's much to be said for that. There are very good reasons why that is said. But I and my wife had a personal experience to confirm that. During the fair, she went shopping, as she likes to do, with the daughter of our honorary consul, the honorary consul of Chile in Calcutta, Mr. Yugal Saraf. And they went into a store to buy some cloth. And the daughter of Mr. Saraf introduced Norma, my wife, as the wife of the ambassador of Chile. And the man, a young man behind the counter said, "Oh, Chile, Chile, Pablo Neruda, can I recite a poem?" And my wife says, "Of course." And he started there to recite a poem in perfect English of Neruda's lyrical poetry, 20 songs of love. And only in Calcutta can you have an experience like that, that the man behind the counter at a store that sells cloth knows his Neruda so well by heart. And what I would like to do is to illustrate with that story why Calcutta has such a strong literary reputation. When I visited Calcutta, when I was posted as ambassador of Chile in Delhi, I would often visit with Chief Minister Burhanudin Bhattacharya, who was the chief minister of West Bengal all the time. And we would have these wonderful conversations on politics, on literature, on so many topics. And he was, of course, the ultimate scholar, both a scholar and a gentleman. And in that vein of, both scholarship, diplomacy, and poetry, is that we are together today to comment on this remarkable book by Ambassador Abhay. And as you know, the tradition of writers in diplomacy goes back a long time. Harold Nicholson, one of the leading writers on diplomacy, British diplomat, distinguished diplomat who wrote a book on diplomacy in the 1930s that is still used. He said that diplomacy is a written art form. And, as a result of that, there are, of course, many distinguished writer diplomats. And India has its significant share of those. But within that genre, there is, of course, a much smaller subgenre, and that is of poet diplomats, in which category Ambassador Abhay falls. In Latin America, as you know, there is a very strong tradition of that. And Pablo Neruda, of course, falls into that category. Now, the interesting thing here is that in Chile, both our Nobel Prize winners in literature, Pablo Neruda and Gabriela Mistral, were both diplomats as well. So there's quite a coincidence in there. There's a strong tradition in Chile in that regard as well. As you know, after being ambassador in India, I was ambassador in China and found out that our first ambassador to China, Armando Uribe, in the 1970s, and his cultural attaché, Gonzalo Rojas, were both poets who actually got the National Prize in Literature years later. So there's a very strong element of that tradition in Chile as well. Octavio Paz, who is also on the cover of the book, The Alphabets of Latin America, falls into that category as well. For some reason in India, where both Octavio Paz and Pablo Neruda are very well known and very popular, they had a strong connection with India. So much so that a good friend in Delhi once commented to me, "Isn't it extraordinary that at some point we had both Octavio Paz and Pablo Neruda as ambassadors here in Delhi?" Well, that is not quite correct. Octavio Paz was ambassador of Mexico in Delhi, but Pablo Neruda never was. The closest he came was he was consul in Colombo in the 1920s. But people associate them both because of their love of India and their writings, both in verse and in prose, on India. The point I would like to make is that much as Neruda and Octavio Paz fell in love with India and expressed this in their writings, Ambassador Abhay has fallen in love with Latin America and conveys that in this very powerful and strong collection of poems. Latin America is a very diverse, a very large region. If we count both the Latin American and Caribbean countries, we're talking about 33 countries. How do you bring them together in a slim volume of poems? Not an easy task. And I thought that the way Ambassador Abhay solved that problem, approached that challenge by relying on the alphabet and then using names of countries, of cities, of writers, of politicians, even of drinks. Caipirinha figures very prominently in the book, was absolutely a wonderful solution to that issue. Now, the Latin America, as you know, has a very dramatic geography with very high mountains, some of the highest mountains in the world. The Andes Mountains are the highest mountains in the world after the Himalaya. Some of the longest and widest rivers, the Amazon River, the Rio de la Plata, and others. So in Abhay's poems, there is a strong element of singing to nature, as it were. He has these wonderful lines on the Andes: the green breasts of earth rise to quench the thirst of insatiable humanity. Or in the Atacama Desert in Chile, the driest desert in the world, in the vastness of the desert, the road merely a line, snow-capped Andes, Sibylline as ever. Or his poem on the Amazon: the anaconda was missing, so they offered us piranha fishing in consolation, in bathing with pink dolphins in the Black River. These are short lines, but they convey in a few words so much, a whole universe behind it. That said, what struck me as the most provocative and the most lasting verses are not so much on nature, fascinating as those verses are, but on city life. Latin America, of course, is very much an urban continent. The majority of Latin Americans live in cities. They do not live in the countryside. And the way Abhay and his poems capture city life, sometimes very gritty, sometimes very difficult, but also with some very beautiful moments. His lines on Avenida Paulista: the destitute squat on the sidewalk as installations of modern art. How do you improve on that? I thought it was an absolutely extraordinary line. The poem on the Carnival in Rio, one of the longest and most powerful. On life in Bogota, that great city in the heights of Colombia, with its wonderful bookstores, restaurants, its gold museum. The sad decadence of Valparaiso, once one of the great 7 ports of the world, and now, and I quote, streets stale, reeking of decay, aging, and death. On Manaus, in the Amazon, in the heart of the Amazon, where rivers meet bearing different colors, and an opera is heard in the middle of the jungle. Or in my own native Santiago, guarded by the Andes, wearing a veil of smoke. We have a lot of smog. Or on Cartagena de Indias, that wonderful city on the Caribbean coast of Colombia, where an orange flame burns in the sky, the city squirms, then revels, inhaling the smell. And if there is one thing that defines Latin America, it is sensuality. And our poet's verses show an uncanny ability to convey that sensuality. And much as Neruda had an ode to red wine, Abhay has a poem on caipirinha, Brazil's national drink, with another line I love: Brazil is body, caipirinha is soul. Again, that line says so much. Abhay was based in Brazil, and Brazil is very much at the center of the book, as in many ways Rio de Janeiro, the old capital, Ciudad Maravillosa, as the song says, with its statue of Christ the Redeemer, the Itamaraty Palace, the revelry in its glorious beaches like Ipanema and Copacabana, one of the most famous beaches in the world. And I quote again, "I have heard Copacabana is full of beauties. I have seen them lying in the sand, wearing nothing but a book in their hand." Bahia and Porto Alegre also made cameo appearances in the book. Many, though obviously not all, of Latin America's most striking urban landscapes found their way to these pages. I take it our poet has not been to Cuba, and I would have loved to see his verses on the Malecón in Havana. The same goes for El Morro in Old San Juan, or the colonial quarter in Quito, in Ecuador, cities that have preserved pieces of the wonderful Spanish colonial architecture and urban design, and retain that very special magic that modern cities find so difficult to recreate. No doubt our poet, still intimidatingly young, as they say, will find the occasion to visit these places and have his poetic imagination fired up with those pastel colors, cobblestone streets, and wooden balconies that speak of another era, yet make also for a very special urban fabric. But there's no doubt that the spirit of Latin America, to be found in the pages of this book, is very much there. Without missing a beat, his lines recreate the colors, the rhythm, and the pre-Columbian roots of a region of vast, empty spaces that ache to be filled with words, as Neruda used to say. Abhay has done so with verve, gusto, and brio, displaying a sensibility of ancient and postmodern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Kokehane. Yes, we remember the day that when Chile was the theme country, invited country in the Kolkata Book Fair. It was a nice pleasure because the pavilion was made in the as the house of Pablo Neruda.
That's right.
And we had a beautiful display of not only the books, but also the culture of Neruda. And we remember that we published one book of Raul Zurita in Bengali.
That's right.
Which was
Absolutely.
released by that. Yeah.
An extraordinary experience.
Yes, Ambassador. Hope in future also you will be able to visit once again the Kolkata Book Fair.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me add, if you permit me, Divya Jyoti, let me add that when the ambassador was here in Delhi, he was the coordinator of a very important project on a bilingual book on Latin American and Caribbean poetry. He was the person who initiated the whole idea. And in 2006, this book, very significant book with more than 87 poets from Latin America and the Caribbean, was produced under his coordinatorship. He was the chief of the GRULAC, group of Latin American countries here. Yeah. And so I must add that while I heard this excellent review of the book, I am reminded of that venture that I could start under him and produce such an excellent book. This is a second an attempt by an Indian diplomat poet of Latin America, which is the other side of the experience that we had here in that book, which was started under Ambassador Kokehane.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Ganguly. Ambassador Abhay, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can hear you, but there's a sound.
I think there is some problem with the video. I'm not able to.
Yeah. We would like to hear the rest of your ideas, your speech. Because we are disconnected, I think, at the middle of your speech.
I think there is some issue with the video connection. So,
okay.
I mean, maybe you can continue, and meanwhile I fix it and
Okay,
get-
ambassador. Okay.
Okay.
Bueno, ahora pasamos a nuestra amiga profesora de Guatemala, because as I told that we are celebrating the 200 years of independence of Central America, and 75 años de la India, y profesor Gladys Enríquez de la Universidad de San Carlos es nuestra coordinadora, que está coordinando, porque cada mes estamos celebrando, tenemos eventos de la celebración de independencia. Gladys.
Bueno, muchas gracias por el espacio, profesor. Gracias por la invitación y de verdad es todo un honor estar con todos ustedes. Ahí sí que platicando un poquito y haciendo como memoria, ¿verdad? Recordando. Cuando eso fue en el 2019, 2010, ¿sí? Cuando platicábamos con el profesor Di Biagiotti, yo de cariño le digo profesor, ¿verdad? Él es un gran doctor también. Pero me lo presentaron así, entonces yo le sigo diciendo así, por respeto y cariño. Cuando hablábamos un poquito de las culturas y todo, ¿verdad? Él me decía, pero ¿por qué ustedes van a tener 200 años de independencia y nosotros solo 75? O sea, ¿verdad? Entonces, nuestros países han sido tan, históricamente hablando, marcan parte de la humanidad de cada uno de nuestros pueblos. De hecho, cuando vienen a conquistar América, a nosotros, según ellos, creían que habían llegado a India. Y por eso a nosotros nos dicen indios también, ¿verdad? Entonces, es una cuestión como muy, muy bonita entender esta parte de la historia, ¿verdad? Y no están tan lejanos, porque vieran que tenemos mucha comida parecida entre India y Latinoamérica y Guatemala, ¿verdad? Sabores, esencias, vestuarios, ¿verdad? Aquí usamos el chal, y allá pues ustedes usan las mujeres, ¿verdad? Entonces, son cuestiones tan relevantes y bonitas entenderlas, ¿verdad? A pesar de que estamos a la mitad del mundo, ustedes, en cuestión de kilómetros también, ¿verdad? Y de tiempo, que casi estamos un mediodía separados. Ustedes están en el futuro, yo estoy en el pasado, ¿verdad? Ustedes ya están terminando el día y nosotros estamos comenzando el día. Bueno, a raíz de las necesidades sanitarias, ya teníamos la idea de hacer algo bonito, de unificar culturas, ¿verdad? De dar a conocer nuestra cultura. No solo la parte negativa de los países, no solo eso, sino que hablar de verdad de quiénes somos. La comida, costumbres, tradiciones, ¿verdad? De dar esa esencia de quiénes son, quiénes viven en India y quiénes viven en Latinoamérica, específicamente en Centroamérica, ¿verdad? Entonces se crea este bonito proyecto, que yo les digo es un proyecto hecho con amor ustedes, porque no estamos recibiendo aportes económicos de ningún lado, sino que cada uno es representante de su país. Y qué bonito hablar de nuestro país, ¿verdad? Las cosas buenas, nuestra cultura, la música, ¿verdad? La literatura. Y bueno, se dio la oportunidad de habilitar los espacios virtuales para poder dar a conocer, para poder dar a presentar nuestros países centroamericanos, ¿verdad? Entonces, en Centroamérica, si vamos a ver una cuestión acá. Geográficamente somos 6 países, pero políticamente somos 5 países, ¿verdad? Entonces, en la actualidad pues se está discutiendo si se va a aperturar un país más o no, pero de aquí a que otras autoridades autoricen el nuevo país, pues seguimos siendo solo 5, ¿verdad? 5 o 6. No puedo separar solo Guatemala porque somos una región, una parte de América, del continente americano, que une Suramérica con Norteamérica. O sea, estamos en el centro, ¿verdad? y nos divide en los dos grandes océanos, el océano Atlántico y el océano Pacífico. Bueno, ahí sí que el entusiasmo, el amor de hablar de nuestros países nos hizo llevar a cabo esta unificación cultural, donde hemos aprendido bastante de su cultura, ¿verdad? Y yo creo que también ustedes han visto un poco de la cultura de todos nosotros, ¿verdad? De Centroamérica. El proyecto consta de un mes hasta llegar a septiembre. Se les va a presentar, se les está presentando diferentes países centroamericanos, ¿verdad? Hablamos de la cultura, música, teatro, literatura. ¿Quiénes son los guatemaltecos? Y así pasó con Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, ¿verdad? Con cada uno de nuestros países. Y han habido diferentes actividades. Y los queremos invitar también a que si les llama la atención, en canal oficial de YouTube del profesor Di Bellotti del instituto, ¿verdad? La Academia Language, puedan ver los videos oficiales. Y también tenemos un canal oficial de Centroamérica que ya está para todo América y Latinoamérica, ¿verdad? De YouTube, donde están todos estos videos también, ¿verdad? Y también aquí vamos a colocar los videos que nos han compartido de allá de India, ¿verdad? Entonces, para ese intercambio cultural. Es algo muy bonito, miren, hacer lazos entre países, lazos de amistad, lazos de cariño, lazos de humanidad, ¿verdad? Ahí sí que hablando con el profesor y ahí platicando con varias personas, hay una frase muy buena que la quiero citar del profesor Di Bellotti. Él dice, sí tenemos nuestros representantes de gobierno, pero estos lazos son más fuertes que la burocracia que se maneja ahí arriba, ¿verdad? Entonces, hacemos más la realidad acá, ¿verdad? Entonces, eso me llevó también a hagamos, digamos, y todo eso, ¿verdad? Porque es la cultura, no solo estamos viendo al ser humano como objeto, sino que como persona, ¿verdad? Y bueno, esperamos les guste el proyecto. También quiero felicitar a los escritores, ¿verdad? A los poetas que dan este granito de realidad de los países, ¿verdad? Es muy importante, a pesar de que nos dice la pandemia no reuniones. Miren, aquí estamos 31 personas conectadas, ¿verdad? Yo sé que es difícil trabajar 8 horas enfrente de una computadora, me ha pasado, yo creo que a ustedes también, pero al final del día uno dice, bueno, hablé con otro ser humano, ¿verdad? Las ideas, las propuestas, los proyectos, ahí están, solo para desarrollar, ¿verdad? Entonces, muchas gracias por esta bonita actividad, ¿verdad? Y felicitar también a la Feria del Libro y todo, ¿verdad? Porque son entes culturales que hacen esto más humano, ¿verdad? Entonces, y adaptarnos a las nuevas necesidades de salud, ¿verdad? Que todo es virtual ahora. Entonces, solo es de agendar bien y poner los relojes a la hora que debe ser por el cambio de horario, ¿verdad? Y bueno, muchísimas gracias por el espacio, profesor. Y estamos festejando también los 75 años de independencia de India, ¿verdad? Entonces, es muy bonito saber y conocer de toda esta bella gama de culturas, ¿verdad? Entonces, todo un placer para mí estar con todos ustedes, un gran placer, embajador, y a todo el público presente. También ahí estaba viendo que don Alberto, mucho gusto, y don Jorge también, que estaba viendo que hablan también español. Entonces, un placer estar con ustedes y estamos para servirles. Gracias, profesor, por el espacio.
Gracias. Gracias, Gladys. Gracias. Ambassador Abhay,
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
Okay, I'm just turning on my, I'm just trying to turn on my camera so
Okay.
that. Hello, can you see me now?
Yes. Now we can see you.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
finally, I mean, I have tried my mobile phone too. So, I had this opportunity to listen to Ambassador Hein, and what an amazing presentation about the book. I think, as a writer, I don't see all those angles as Ambassador Hein sees it, and it was a joy to hear him. So I was telling about the book, that how I came to love Latin America, and how did I end up writing this. So it was, it was Neruda and Octavio Paz and Gabriela Mistral and Cecilia Mireles. These were the lights who attracted me to visit Latin America and to live there, and explore the continent, and write about it. It was kind of a homage to Octavio Paz and to Neruda and to Cecilia Mireles, who all came to India, visited India, and wrote about India. So it was sort of a a dialogue. So when I went to Brazil in 2016, I already had this in mind, that I would like to visit the places where these luminaries were born and lived, and write about them, and probably they were the ones who made the alphabets. So N was for Neruda, and O was for Octavio Paz for me, and C was for Cecilia Mireles. So these, and then slowly, these were the basic alphabets, and slowly I started building up. And I had this book in mind before I arrived in Latin America. I'm very happy that this is being translated into Spanish, and more and more Latin Americans would be able to read that way. It has been translated and published into Italian earlier this year, and also a Portuguese. It's also being translated into Portuguese. Many of these poems first appeared actually in Portuguese translation. For example, Caipirinha, or Carnival at Rio, or Borges, for example. Today happens also to be the birth anniversary of one of the great Latin American writers, Julio Cortázar, and today, I would love to read a poem about him from this book. Here is a poem about Cortázar. It starts with a quote by Cortázar. Literature is a game, but it's a game one can put one's life into. And then here's the poem. What is literature? I asked Cortázar. He did not answer. Hence this game of words to find order in chaos. It's a tribute to his book. Is one of most well-known books, which is about this this game where you can read the book both ways, from forward to backward and backward to forward, and in any order. So I think I would also like to read a poem about Gabriela Mistral, who inspired me as a poet and as a diplomat. And Ambassador Hein mentioned her. She was the first Latin American to receive a Nobel Prize in Literature, and I happened to come across a poem of her called Dame la Mano, and I was so fascinated with the poem that I thought to rewrite it, and this is the rewritten poem, her poem Dame la Mano. Read me your poem and we shall float freely across the cosmos like a comet. Read me your poem and I will be placed like a butterfly drunk on nectar. We shall drink the same verse from the fountain of the universe, like two hummingbirds in mid-air, like two hummingbirds, nothing more. You are swift wind, and I am a fearless horse, and we shall leap together to the moon, because we are two bodies, but one soul, and nothing more. It also has a poem about, because the book is being discussed in Kolkata, about, it has a poem about Tagore and Victoria Ocampo. And here is a poem, I think it would be interesting. An ailing poet sheltered in her home, her heart, she, his Bizaya, his poetry, his life. Victoria and Tagore, two souls dancing in ecstasy. Purabi blowing incessantly between India and Argentina. And a poem about Borges, one of my all-time favorite. And here is a poem where I go to Buenos Aires and look for Borges. And it begins with a quote by Borges. I know of one Greek labyrinth, which is a single straight line. Along that line, so many philosophers have lost themselves. George Louis Borges, Death and the Campus. And it's a simple poem in 4 stanzas. Looking for Borges, I came to Argentina. I found him nowhere. I searched all the libraries and cafes, all the labyrinthine streets of Buenos Aires. He was not even at La Recoleta. I found merely a mirror and a face staring at me in disbelief. It's hard to believe. Everyone told me Borges lived in Argentina. And here's a poem about Neruda as well, but it's a different Neruda in the poem, because I think that, as much as I admire Neruda and his poetry, I also look at his life critically, and examine life of poets, through him. And it's a strong poem. So just a warning to some of you, beforehand. But then, here is a poem about another great poet from Chile called Nicanor Parra. And this is just and he said, in Spanish, me retracto de todo lo dicho. Me retracto de todo lo dicho. And poem is take back. I take back everything. Everything I have said, I take back. Take back. It has poems about some of the, one of the great writers of Latin America, which many of us know, Eduardo Galeano. And here is a letter. It's a letter to Eduardo Galeano. And it begins with, "Dear Eduardo, the open veins of Latin America have been cut open wider since your departure. New veins are being cut open every day. The number of workers in the vein opening industry has multiplied. Unemployment rate has significantly dropped. Inflation has also come down. Isn't it development? What else would you call development?" And the poem goes on. So I will not read the whole poem. A poem about Christ the Redeemer. A gigantic white angel stands on the mountain Corcovado, looking at the Guanabara Bay. White sands of Ipanema shines in his eyes. In the evening, his shadow falls over favelas as night falls, and the city sleeps. He takes off the mountain, swoops over the city, admiring its exquisite beauty, trying to redeem it of its sins, but helpless. He returns every dawn to the mountain and turns into a statue, his hands spread, wings folded, to keep his legend alive, to make people believe in his power, who visit him in hordes every day, braving tropical heat and vertigo. And a poem which Ambassador Hein mentioned, Carnival, which is inspired by Proof Rock of Eliot. It's Proof Rock at the Carnival in Rio. And here is a line. Let's go then to Rio, to the carnival, when drums are beating like heartbeats of lovers, meeting after a long interval, and samba dancers are out in the streets. Let's go and catch a flight to Rio, flight full of revelers that take off at night. Oh, do not say no.
let's go. In the samba drum, dancers come and go, showing off their torso. The colorful floats roll on and on. The colorful marchers sing passionate songs. Mesmerized revelers bite their tongues and shout in drunken madness, swaying back and forth like sea waves under the full moon February night. There will be time for the samba dancers to move their hips back and forth. There will be time. There will be time to dance in full glory under the moon. There will be time to steal hearts, moving hands and feet, time for this, time for that, and time yet for 100 others before the long night is finally over. In the samba drum, dancers come and go, showing off their torso. And maybe the last poem, Caipirinha. It's a national drink of Brazil, and here is a poem. I asked a bartender in Brasilia for a drink. She said nothing, just offered me a caipirinha. I drank it happily and asked, what is it? She said, Brazil is body, caipirinha, its soul. Drink whiskey when in Scotland, rum in the Caribbean. When in Brazil, drink caipirinha. Curious, I asked, how is this magic potion made? Her face blossomed like a sunflower, and she said, pour cachaça of your choice, squeeze a lemon, mix it with crushed sugar and ice. And love? She smiled, put a gentle kiss on my cheeks, and said, a great drink must have in it love distilled. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Todos.
Thank you, Ambassador Abhay. I hope that now a lot of students are there. They were, for the last few weeks, they are asking me about the book. Now they are a little more about the book. Now we pass to Anirban Chattopadhyay, who, as I told, the former editor of the Anandabazar Potrika, the highest circulated dailies in Bengali. And Anirban has expressed his love for your book. And now let's hear from him.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes y buenos días. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm honored to be here in this wonderful company. And I'm actually honored to be involved in the project of translating this excellent book. I have grown really extremely fond of this book. I've read through the poems a number of times already, translated some of them, planning to do the rest in the next few weeks. I don't know whether I'll be able to do justice. In fact, being only a very and a student at, I would say, a very elementary level of Spanish, I agreed to do this project only because I have immense faith in my maestro, Dibbojyoti, and he has assured me that he will look after my translations. So as for the poems and my feeling about the translations, I'll be very brief in expressing a couple of points about it. One of them is, of course, the cultural unity that Professor Gladys was speaking about. This cultural unity and conversation between different cultures is, I think, the most important part of any project of translation that we can attempt. And it's On the one hand, we have a number of very well-known translations of Latin American literature, generally Spanish literature, in Bengali, our own language. But at the same time, I would say there is a lot more to be done about this. We have done only a very small part of what we can and what we should do. So this can be a part of a much bigger project that we can think about. And the other thing that I would like to mention is, as I went through these poems, I was struck by the sensuality and at the same time the profound depth of the feelings, that some of which was mentioned and illustrated by Ambassador Heine. I completely agree with his reading, his beautiful reading of the poems. And actually, that makes the task of translating these poems into a language which is alien to me quite difficult. So once again, I hope that I'll be able to do justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anirban. Thank you very much. Yeah, it is really tough, the feeling to bring, but we are trying our best to do. And I have sent some of the translation to some poets, without mentioning who is the author, who is the poet, anything, and they appreciated the feeling of the poems. They said that these are the poet must have felt Latin America from the heart, must have a strong feeling about the people and the culture of Latin America. So I hope when the book will come out, they all have asked me for the book, that how to get the book, where to get the book. And we hope that it will be, after the book fair, it will reach you all. Now we go for some translations of some poems, 4 poems that will be read out by our students, because ultimately they are the people who will read it and enjoy it more. And they must get inspiration of writing, reading, both. So I request first Shoptumi Ghosh to read the 2 translations of the poems. One is Amazon and another is Atahualpa. Shoptumi.
Buenas tardes a todos. Good evening in India. Voy a leer la poema Amazona. Falta Balam anaconda, así nos ofrecieron que vayamos a pescar las pirañas, por consuelo y bañándose con los delfines rosas en el río Negro. Cogieron los pobres caminitos en la noche cuando se dormían y nos llevaron atrás del río para encontrar los indios. No estaba nadie. Gracias. Y luego la poema Atahualpa. Yo, Atahualpa, el último emperador inca, nacido un soberano, murió prisionero, estrangulado sin piedad por un garrote bajo de la vigilancia de fraile asusto, luego cremado sin una inca entierro, digno para prevenir mi renacimiento. Los españoles trajeron una enfermedad extraña a los Andes que le mató a mi padre.
Leyendo un poema.
Su sucesor murió pronto, tirando el Inca Imperio en una guerra de sucesión. Huáscar y yo nos peleamos por años. somendiétolo. Salí victorioso. Los instrados amados pronto enteraron a mi imperio. Con 69 caballos y 100 más hombres, siendo ingenio o benigno, los llamé por un diálogo, cayendo en su trampa. El frágil, engañoso, me ofreció un brevario, pidiéndome que me convirtiera al cristianismo. Indignado, yo lo tiré en rabio. Pizarro les ordenó a sus hombres a atacar. Un puñado de ellos, fuertemente armados, mascaron mi ejército de 5,000. Ninguno de ellos fue herido o matado. Me capturan vivo en el campo de batalla. Para ser liberado, me ofrecía a llenar mi celda de plata y oro, pero Pizarro hizo un simulacro de juicio y me condenó a muerto por fuego. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaptami. Let's Madhurima Dash to recite 2 more poems. One is Avenida Paulista y Atacama. Madhurima.
Hola, buenas tardes. Ahora recitaré poemas fantásticos de Abhay. Avenida Paulista. Avenida Paulista me encanta. A la noche, a mirarle a la cara. Camino a lo largo de la senda estirada por una milla, flanqueada por mini torres Eiffel incontables. Jóvenes bulliciosos, mujeres vivaces, cantando, saboreando los rápidos, sorbiendo la capriosca. Las parejas besándose, abrazándose, arrullando. Amor, amor, andando mano a mano. Los indigentes agachándose en la acera, como instalaciones del arte moderno. Una casa blanca, vacía y cerrada, brilla por la noche fuera de sus puertas. Se duerme una madre sosteniendo a su bebé apretada. Un perro negro salta sobre sus cuerpos. Un patinador corre junto a ellas a toda prisa. Cerca en un graffiti cobra vida pele, haciendo el amor apasionado a una dama. Me advirtieron que no se aventurara demasiado tarde en la noche. Y aún estoy aquí, mirando a la luna sobre Avenida Paulista, intentando sentirme el latido de América Latina. Ahora, segundo. Atacama. Me quedo aquí, entre esta inmensidad del frío desierto, las sombras saltando, los molinos provocando a los nuevos Don Quijotes, colinas que se ondulan y los pechos curvos y ágiles del desierto. El sol brillando sin parar en silencio. No un solo animal ni pájaro, nada como la tierra. En la inmensidad del desierto, la carretera, solo una raya. Los Andes cubiertos de nieve, civilino como siempre. En la madrugada, la luna colgando del cielo como una luz. Las estrellas todavía brillantes, en camino a lagunas altiplánicos. Colinas pequeñas a lo largo de Andes. El amanecer las ilumina en rosa suave. Una pirámide invertida de luz, aire, cielo y nubes. En la laguna Miniques, en sus orillas decoloradas de sal, el nido de los pájaros de Queens. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Madhurima. We come to the end of our today's program. We cannot say it the end. This is the beginning of the new journey with the book, and I hope it will reach everybody soon. And we thank, on behalf of the whole team, we thank Ambassador Abhay to give us the opportunity to be in the project with him. And we are trying to set up a common chain of poets, writers, authors. We have already set up this with the Central America, with each country, with the professors, with the universities. We have set up a platform, and now we are trying to set up a platform with the rest of the Latin American countries so that we can share our feelings, share this book to reach the Latin American poets and the writers. Thank you, Ambassador Abhay. Thank you, Ambassador Jorge Heine. It's a great pleasure to see you after so long time. And thank you, Anirban. Thank you, Gladys, to be here in the early morning. And thank everybody who are present here, because your presence is also an encouragement for us. Because people says that the present generation and everybody is running away from poetry, running away from literature. Let's prove that no, we are still united, we still love poetry, still love literature, and we can move forward with all these cultural elements. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Divyajyoti, I had a question to Mr. Abhay Kumar, if you permit me.
Yeah.
If you have 2-3 minutes. Ambassador Abhay Kumar, I just wanted to know if these Spanish translations have been done by one person or a group of persons. Who has done these translations into Spanish?
We are doing, basically two people are doing, Anirban and I.
Into Spanish?
Into Spanish. And
okay.
Yes. And then it was revised by a poet of Latin America. The
okay.
Spanish poets, they will be doing the final, the salt, the pepper, they will add to it, and finally it will be published.
So which means you are also doing the Bengali translation and the Spanish, both?
Yes, the Spanish and the Bengali. Bengali's translation is basically first level translation is being done by the senior students who have passed out, who have already experience in translation. After that, it will be corrected by Bengali poets who are established poets. They will do the final reading, which will become the poetry, and then we will publish.
That's a very good idea.
Because we with our experience, we have made everything a 2-tier or a 3-tier process. The basic translation, then the because if you remember, we did a translation of Octavio Paz, which was Octavio Paz into Bengali in collaboration with the Embassy of Mexico. And first it was done by the senior students. Then we had this professor of comparative literature, Abhay K,
yes,
who collaborated with us, who sat with the translators,
understanding
it, and also Conrado Tostado, the cultural secretary, who also involved in the process before the final yes. publication.
A small second question to Mr. Abhay Kumar again. Mr. Abhay Kumar, there have been a number of visitors from India, receiving or writing about their reception of Latin America. Indian writers, poets, in the form of travelogues and even in poetry and literary pieces. Have you had an occasion to go through some of them? In the last 30-40 years, there have been quite a few Indians who have visited Latin America, and I find your book is almost a culmination of that kind of an experience. from a really original poet. I had just this curiosity, whether in your book, in your introduction of the book, do you mention about such reception as you yourself have done about Latin America? Is there anything of that sort in your book? Or are you thinking of that? Do you have such project? Because only from people like you, we can expect that kind of a reception, you know, of your kind of a comprehension of what already Indians have done about Latin America. Because we have done here much work on Latin Americans thinking about India, writing about India. And your kind of work just is the counterpart. And we'll be very interested in knowing if you are in touch with such works, or are you thinking of that, or is that one of your projects that you may have in mind? I just had a curiosity to ask.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Besides that, let me mention that I have really liked, you know, in the kind of presentation that Ambassador Jorge Jaime and you yourself, you know, gave, you know, in very short time, the perception of various places of Latin America, and your reactions to also some of the great poets that we have always known about Latin America. I'm very impressed with your reception. This is what I wanted to make. I also would like you to, I do not know if you have already seen that, you know, the book that Ambassador Heine here was present, and I coordinated a project on, it's called Esta riqueza abandonada, yeh sampannata bikhri hui. It's a bilingual translation of, you know, more than 300 pages, more than 87 poets from Latin America and Caribbean, which was done in 2006 under the coordinatorship of Ambassador Heine. And this was produced by Sahitya Academy. I will ask them to send you a copy of that book so that you have, you know, a vision of this counterpart also. How we receive Latin America from India, and how we have seen, but it is in a bilingual Spanish-Hindi language. Having said that, let me congratulate you again and all of you for organizing this, and particularly Divya Jyoti, who is known to, you know, as a forerunner, you know, who spearheads such projects which bring us together, India and Latin America, in various ways. I'm really thankful to him also for inviting me to this seminar to be able to interact with you. Thank you, Anirban, also for your work, which I have known earlier also, but this was a good opportunity to see you again. Gladys and all the other students of the Indo-Hispanic Center, I'm very glad to see you, and I hope that this work, excellent work, you people continue in future. Thank you very much. That's all. I'm sorry to have taken your time so much.
Thank you, Professor, for your very kind remarks and very informative presentation about the work which has already been done. I have not actually, you know, looked at the works of the other Indians who have visited Latin America earlier and written about it. It's I mean, the last person whose works I read was Tagore, who visited, who was going to visit, who was invited by the government of Peru, but he could not visit Peru, and he had to stay back in Argentina because of his health. So, and then I have visited that place where he stayed in the outskirts of Buenos Aires. And, yes, and I mean, I think I did read some work which was, and there was later a movie made about his Pablo Cesar, yes, about his relationship with Victoria Ocampo. So yes. I think that's the
thinking of him.
Yeah, thinking of him. So that's the last one, but it's a very good idea to put together a work of Indians visiting Latin America and how Indians see Latin America. I think it would be a great project which maybe the Academy could take up, or maybe the Sahitya Academy could take up in Delhi. I think it's an idea worth pursuing. On my part, I have done some more work, and one is this book called 100 Great Indian Poems, which have been translated into Spanish and published by the University of Nuevo León in Mexico, Monterrey. So, and I have edited a book of Brazilian poets. I have translated from Portuguese into English, which has 60 works of 60 Brazilian poets. It's called New Brazilian Poems.
Excellent.
So that's, I mean, I think it's a work worth continuing to build literary bridges between our two continents. And I must compliment you and Ambassador Hein for this, for spearheading that project of translation from Latin American poetry into Hindi. So I think I would love to have a copy of that book. I have one book which is Peruvian poetry. So yes, but this book would be very interesting and important for me, and I would also look for it. I would like to thank you and thank Professor Heine for his very kind and generous remarks. Professor Heine is an amazingly kind and generous person I have come across in my life, and he's always very supportive, and he's the fountain of kindness. So I would just say thank you, Ambassador Heine, for all the support and help, and thank you, Professor Ganguly, for this information.
While you are,
If I may add, can I add something? One last footnote, talking about perceptions of India by Latin Americans. I have a book called La Nueva India, which was published in Chile in 2012, in which I bring my own perspective on Mother India, which I hope some of you can have a look at. Thank you.
How can we have that book, sir?
Well, I think it is now only available in e-form. Let me see if I can send you the details.
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's in Spanish. Is it in Spanish?
Yes, in Spanish. Yes.
Spanish. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending us today. Thank you.
Thank you, and look forward to the book.
Yes.
And thanks.
And you are looking for the book, and we are looking for you.
No, I mean, we should have another session with Ambassador Heine once the book comes.
Yes, sure. We will, even if we have a physical release, we will have a virtual release also.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for organizing this event. Thank you to all the members of the Academy and Mr. Anirvan for leading the translation project.
Thank you very much.
And the audience for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.